Welcome to the Sales Career Podcast. This is your host, Kevin Hopp. Whether you're an executive, sales leader, or just getting your career in sales started, I'm here to help you read between the lines and hear the real stories that you can't get from a resume or from a LinkedIn profile, all designed to help you shape your own sales career. Let's dive right into today's episode and see what we can learn. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Sales Career Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Hopp. My guest today is a seasoned tech executive, former CEO, COO, multiple-time founder here. He's a mentor for many different organizations, and now currently CEO of Newman Consulting Group. Everyone welcome the great and powerful Alex Newmann.
Thanks for having me on. I don't know if great and powerful is the right words, but that's a sweet intro. I should bring you wherever I go. That'd be a nice way to pump me up every time I open the door.
Look, all I'm missing is like I want to change my mic to be up above and be like, "Let's get ready to rumble." Like I love that guy.
Style. Let's do it. That's awesome.
Right? Like that guy, that announcer guy's made an entire career for himself just on being the hype man.
Yeah.
And just walking up there and being, let's get ready to rumble. So I think it's a really good way to get people to open up and to think positively about themselves, right? Like I kind of wish that I had a hype man like reminding me, Kevin, here's who you are. Here's what you've accomplished before you go into things where it's situations where you might feel vulnerable, right? Like before you go into an interview or before you go into like different things. Like my uncle's always been that guy for me. Early on in my career, I would tell him, "Hey, I got this interview and like I'm nervous about it." And like he would text me like these very short, sweet text messages like, "Hey, you're a badass. Remember like where you come from and what you've done." And I'm like, "Yes." It's like having a shield of, metal in front of you when you walk into this. So that's the whole point of it. Alex, let's dig into it a little bit here. So you've had a really interesting career. You've done a lot of different things. It started, it looks like, in the banking industry, and fast forward all the way to where you are now, and you're like the tech outbound sales guru guy. Talk to me about like that start in banking.
So it's actually before that. Cutco knives was where I learned how to sell. So I might not have that on my profile or resume, but I got my start in Cutco sales, going kind of door to door selling, high-end kitchen cutlery. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth. I learned about kind of creating structure around an unstructured day, self-motivating yourself, practicing, that type of thing. I thought it was going to be an easy job, and I got punched in the face a couple times to really learn what sales was all about, but it was fun.
So you didn't. So one could say that you didn't make the cut, but
yeah. Oh, that's impressive. No, I actually almost got fired in I think it was the first week or the first 2 weeks, something like that. It was funny because I started out kind of a summer job as a lot of kids do when I was working in restaurants and grocery stores and things like that, and it wasn't for me. And my mom actually found a classified ad for vector marketing in Cutco, and said you get paid like $10 an hour or $10 an appointment if you and make as much as you want, unlimited. And I was like, this is perfect. I can make as much as I want. You get paid about how much you work and how hard you work. And I thought, I was like, this is a piece of cake. I'll just ride this coach train throughout the summer and come back into the school year, nice and rich and wealthy as a student. And I learned what sales was really about.
I love it. It's I mentioned this on one of my other podcasts. It's the one form of sales I've never done, which is like that B2C raw, either door knocking or like mall kiosk, right? So I had on a few weeks back Ryan Paris on the podcast, and he told me he got his start by managing people at mall kiosks. So standing in the middle of the mall, just waiting for people to come by. So Cutco is an interesting story for me too, because like I watched a few kids in my high school do it, and one of the kids came to my house. Like I came down like on a Saturday morning, and I'm like woke up and come downstairs, and like there's my buddy from the football team sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, like showing him all the knives and stuff. And I'm like, Jimmy, what are you doing here? And he's like, hey, man. And he like had on like a collared shirt and everything. And I remember thinking, gosh, what a dork, you know? And then Jimmy bought the brand new paintball gun. Jimmy bought customized controllers for Xbox, and he had all this money. And I was like, what? Are you telling me like he's making money over here? Like, geez. So that's really interesting. The Cutco was your start because they're everywhere, right? Like that, they're all over the United States. So I do want to go back to on your LinkedIn, the first thing you can see is Wells Fargo, right? Yeah. So for someone to start at Wells Fargo as like a business banker, how did that work from like going from Wells Fargo to transitioning to sales?
Yeah, I mean, so I got started at Cutco and I was selling there, and I did it throughout college. And then when I left school and graduated, I really was just looking for a job where I could learn a ton. My uncle is an entrepreneur. He runs a auto wrecking business here in Chicago, very successful. And I kind of wanted to follow that path for a really long time, but I didn't really know how you get there. So I knew I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and start my own company. And one of the things that he always told me was learn how to sell and you'll never go hungry. And then the second best piece of advice he ever told me is don't focus on the sale, focus on the learning. And so you're ultimately, when you're working for somebody else, you're getting paid to learn. And if you're not, that's probably a good signal to go do something else. But if you're getting paid to learn, just collect all the different things about that role or about that company that you can and continue to work your way up. So for me, I didn't have a great grasp of finance. And I really, really wanted to get like true financial knowledge, not what you read in a book or what you read in a textbook and things like from going through school. But I actually wanted hands-on experience about credit scores and debt to income ratios and understanding all the different like actual cash flow statements in process and in a working business. What is the feeling like when you actually have to manage a P&L? You have to pay people. And I don't think that there's any other way to truly understand that than to actually go and do it or be a part of it in some way. So I applied. I kind of worked my way through a couple of different sales roles, and business banking was kind of where I really enjoyed. I'd been on the home mortgage side and sold a bunch of subprime mortgages, which is a fantastic learning experience in and of itself. And then moved over to the business side, and that's really where it just started to click. Like I really, really liked the B2B side over the B2C side. I love working with businesses, and it's kind of shown throughout my career. But I love the problems, the tenacity, the drive, the kind of the guts that somebody has to say, hey, I'm going to start my own business, and they build it up and they get to reap the benefits of all of that hard work. It's no different than commission-only sales or door-to-door sales or any kind of sales role. Is you work really, really hard, but you have to put structure into place and goals and strategy and consistent of execution, that type of thing. It was pretty cool.
I can imagine. One of the things that I really didn't even grasp until probably a year and a half ago in my sales career is how important understanding a P&L is, right? Like understanding, like, okay, I'm in sales. I think I'm super valuable. Everyone always thinks they're super valuable. But how does what I'm doing on the day-to-day, my quota, my activities, the revenue I'm expected to bring in versus what I really bring in, how does all of that really net out into a profit and loss statement and profitability of the business? So you went into banking as a way to get that hands-on experience. But then quickly I see here you kind of moved into like sales engineering, right? And so that practical knowledge of finance, like, talk to me a little bit. Did you get really deep into this? Like, were you rocking spreadsheets at this point? Like, where you would build a P&L for somebody and like own the finance side of things?
I wouldn't say that I own the finance side, but I was very heavily involved in looking at different types of data and ratios and building out models. And I got pretty ingrained into it. It really helps me understand how the business is actually working. So there's always a handful of metrics that kind of say what is the health of the business. Mm-hmm. And that was, as a banker, if you're looking for a loan, or if you're looking for an investment to something else, or you want to hire more people, or whatever it is, like that's the whole point, is to understand the health of your business to be able to make those decisions in any kind of strategic, smart way. So I was just kind of dove into that as much as I could, and I figured all of this learning that Wells Fargo is literally paying me to learn and paying me to do is only going to set myself up for the future. So it was really more of an investment in me. I mean, I did it fairly selfishly, and I think most people should do it that way. Everybody else gets to benefit from it. Wells Fargo got to benefit from it. All the customers got to benefit from it. But I did it for me, and then it was just kind of this trickle out approach. But it really is the kind of the foundation of any kind of sales or business ownership type position, is you have to understand your numbers. I talk about quota all the time, and it should always be a foundational question as to why is the quota whatever the quota is. If you don't understand not only why your quota is, but how the whole thing actually works inside of the business, like you're just missing on the bigger picture. Like, why is your number what it is? How did they get to that number? And then you can trickle down to all different types of conversations. It just makes you such a more well-rounded, confident salesperson when you kind of understand all of those whys.
And I really do wonder how many sellers listening to this right now can work that back. Like, has your manager, has your director, has your direct, whoever you report to, have they backed that all the way out to the big picture of what your company's trying to accomplish in this year? Because I know when I was a seller, that didn't happen. I was not having those conversations. And when the comp plan got rolled out, it was given to me, and it was, here's what it is, here's the number, go hit it. But when I would ask questions, it was really hard to get solid answers, right? And then, So
sometimes your manager doesn't know because they didn't ask the question. And I think the key, and you can do it in a very professionally respectful way, is you just keep asking until you get the questions answered. Mm-hmm. Or I would say that maybe it's time to go do something else or go to a different company. Mm-hmm. But if numbers are just given to you and you just say yes and you just take it for what it is, I don't know. I mean, there's a difference between going to a Wells Fargo or a Salesforce or a Google, where there's a proven way of doing everything at companies like that, and you don't have a lot of say. But that doesn't mean that you can't ask the questions as to help me understand how you get to one place. The smaller the companies, you start having made up numbers and made up quotas, and you have a little bit more direct access to the top of who's making it. Maybe just skip people and go directly there. You can do it in a professional way, in a respectful way. But I think the key is you got to really understand, like, why. Like, help me understand why, and then help me understand, is there some kind of formulaic way in which you expect me to even hit these numbers? So if my average order size is $5,000 and you want me to sell $2 million this year, that's a lot of deals. Yeah. And if you're expecting me to be a full cycle sales rep, like, how does this work? Like, realistically, this doesn't make any sense. How can I actually do this each and every single day? There's times, more often than not, if you show a formulaic way to your manager or your boss or your supervisor or even your VP of sales, they might go, oh my God, you're right. I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah.
Or they should have an answer as to how you're supposed to get it.
Right. Well, I'm in consulting. You're in consulting. I think we make all of our money knowing that a lot of orgs don't have that formulaic way, right? This is a good opportunity for you to plug. You have two courses that you're selling, right? That are all about trying to help companies get a formulaic strategy and process around their sales. Like, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, is that what your courses are designed to do, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it. So I have two courses. One is the Startup Sales Playbook, and one is a Prospecting Playbook. So when I think of playbooks, I think of a structured, kind of directional focused approach or a system in order to sell and to build upon, which then you can repeat and execute on over and over and over again. And then through data or through metrics, you can identify and measure what's working and what isn't working so that you can consistently improve and you can measurably get better, better, and better, and better. And then everybody in your organization does it the same way, sells the same way, prospects the same way. So the courses are both designed to be able to learn the information, watch it as many times as you want. They're great. They're in video format. Feedback's been really, 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 really great about both of them. And it's just about using the actual strategies and then implementing. They're not super complex. They don't take long to digest. But the point of it is to build an actual foundation so that you can actually build on it and build on it and build on it and train off of all the same place, as opposed to what you see a lot is you have to onboard yourself. You have to go figure out how to sell. There isn't a real sales strategy. It's go sell as much as you possibly can for as long as you can. And there's not really a directional way in how it's all set up. But if you do it wrong, I'm going to yell at you.
Wow, you just described half of my resume. I've worked for a few leaders. You know, one case in particular, I had a 60, I think he was 63-year-old VP. I promise you, it was not very formulaic what we were doing. It's a little bit of, hey, back in my day, right? And then it's like, well, what do I do tomorrow? How are we using this tech stack that we have, and what's the flow? And just sell, make sure you hit the quota this week, and you're doing some activities, that's good.
It's twofold. Leadership is 100% not off the hook in any way. You will never hear me ever say that. It is 100% on leadership to implement and to train and to coach and teach to the same strategy. You recruit people to sell to in a specific way to specific pain points, so on and so forth. That is 100% true. You need to reinforce everything that's happening. But on the flip side of that, the actual sales rep is not off the hook. And that's the other side of the coin that you see a lot of this blame game. Mm-hmm. And I see it with junior reps. And I don't mean junior as in age. I mean junior as in less experience. That could mean age, or that could mean just straight experience. But that's the goal, is to understand what is it that you need to do in order to be successful, and put that on yourself. Don't count on anybody else to help you hit your number, to learn, to be able to generate your own income. Should your leadership help? Hell yeah. Absolutely. Duh.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not really how a lot of companies are set up today. That's not how a lot of managers look at it or think about it or want to do it, which is a different question around picking which company to work at. Yep. But sales reps need to pick and choose the companies and the roles that are interesting to them, that are self-curious, self-resourceful, because you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to dig for information. I have never been a part of a company that I've never onboarded myself. And then I built the playbook, and then I taught everybody else how to do it.
Right. And me too, very, very similarly, right? I'm like a serial first hire. I've been the first hire or first hire of my type or whatever. I've always been very early in my companies. Although my resume looks nothing like yours. Let's back up a little bit here. I see that Pivot Desk and Tech Day, both of these you have in LinkedIn, that they were acquired. I've been involved in small companies and startups my whole career, going on 8 years. Never been part of an acquisition or any meaningful M&A. So talk to me a little bit about that. What was that like to be at Pivot Desk, for instance, and be there for almost 4 years and then get acquired? What was that run like?
So Pivot Desk was my second MBA, I guess. I actually started getting my MBA while I was starting at Pivot Desk. So a couple of the founders had just gotten into a program called Techstars. They had a PowerPoint deck, and they said that they were doing this thing that was like Airbnb for office space, and they were joining Techstars. So I said, well, what the hell is Airbnb? What the hell is Techstars? And cool, that sounds fun. Let's go do this. So I started from the very, very beginning. So there was nothing. There was a PowerPoint deck, and there was no brand. We hadn't really figured out messaging or anything. So from the very beginning, I got to build all of that, build the sales process and the strategy and who to recruit and how to train them and the whole thing. I left, I want to say it was about 6 to 12 months before it was actually finally acquired. So I wasn't there to go through the whole process. But the actual building journey was probably some of the greatest experiences of my life. I mean, that's where I learned what it is that I learned today and what I teach. I did a lot of experiments. That's how I kind of made my name. I learned a ton. I screwed up a ton. And it's one of the best things that I've done in my career was build a company from like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dream that I've tried to find multiple times here in my career, which is I'll get in early, and when I'm in early with a founding team, like they'll invest in me, I'll invest in them, and we'll have this reciprocal relationship where, to your earlier point, I'm getting paid to learn, I'm getting paid to grow. But it is, pretty fortunate that you were able to ride there as long as you did, and then they got acquired, which is pretty cool. And then you headed over to Tech Day, where you have listed as kind of a co-founder situation. Were you there for that acquisition?
Yes. So we did that. That was nice because it was more of a bootstrapped company, which was a little bit different. So there were just kind of less hands in the pot. And co-founder is CEO is a great friend of mine, one of my good friends. Kind of recruited me to help him build out the sales org there as he was getting that off the ground, and had some really good success there. And we kind of got to a point in our lives where it just wasn't as fun as it used to be. So we had some conversations to say, hey, it was time to put this into some other people's hands to kind of take it to the next level. We just kind of run out of energy on it. And we found some people who were pretty passionate and had proven in previous history that they take events companies and kind of take them to the next level. So we got an offer that we couldn't refuse, and the rest is history. But that was a great experience. I'm going to guess that it's not your traditional company acquisition experience.
Yeah. Well, when I think of acquisitions, I think of like the South Park episode. Have you seen the South Park episode? Like,
which one?
What is Cartman says, here's our plan. The plan is to start up, bro down, and cash out. Yeah. And that's like the startup journey, right? Like start up, bro down, like get the swag and the beer on tap in the office, and then sell out, and then sell your company and walk away a millionaire, and sit on the couch and talk about how you sold your big company for the rest of your life. Yeah. So,
well, I think the part that a lot of people skip is the insane number of hours that you put in and the effort that it takes. There's no doubt about it that it's hard. I think that there's definitely some luck, especially with market timing and product and that type of thing. People who you recruit, how you build your company is obviously important, but it is not just like play ping pong and chug beer and stuff like that to, all of a sudden you got $1 billion valuation. There's a lot of companies that have raised a lot of money and still don't make it. So,
right. That's an interesting little angle to talk about here too, because you have experience in like the traditional finance world, and then you worked at a bootstrap company. What's your take on VC funding? I see a lot of people on LinkedIn get really, really excited about VC money. And then every now and then I love these types of dudes that are on LinkedIn and they're just contrarians. They're mavericks. And they'll comment things on, Gong raises Series E at $1 jillion, $300 million round. And their comment is, ouch, dilution, period.
Yeah.
And so many people don't understand that when you do equity financing, VC financing, it gets harder and harder and harder for everybody to make a lot of money on an exit. And you're betting really big that you're going to be the next big giant exit, right? You have to exit at a big multiple in order for everyone to get paid out. What's your take on that? Is like VC funding, like a really positive thing? Should people be like looking for the gongs of the world and the outreaches that have raised over $500 million? Is that where they should cut their teeth?
So I think it's two different ways of building your business. If you're going to go VC back, you build and grow your business and you make decisions differently than if you're going to have a bootstrapped company. I think that's probably number one if you're thinking about building a company, that you make different decisions. You also lose control. When you start to add outside investors to your company, especially it starts to do well, you will start to lose majority control over your company. I mean, the companies that are going for $1 billion, $2 billion, whatever IPO, they own, I don't know, probably less than double-digit percentage of their account or of the company. Like, nobody's owning 55, 80, 90% of this company. The investors who are putting in millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, they own the percentage of the company. Now, if you have 1 or 2 or 5% of a $1 billion company, yeah, you make a ton of money. If you have 0.5% of a $1 billion company, you make a lot of money off of that as well. But how many companies actually get there? You have to stick around for a long time to have, number one, the ability to even exercise your options. And we can talk all about actual options versus shares or founder shares, which is a very common misunderstood and mistake that employees at companies make. Vesting schedules, exercising those options and the money that is required, the longevity of it. So there's all kinds of different things that really go into, should you build a VC-backed company or should you work at a VC-backed company? I love the VC-backed world. I think that it is a very interesting, fast-paced way to grow a business. It is not the only way to grow a business. And while it is cool and it is sexy and it's the way that everybody on LinkedIn and Twitter talk, it's because there's billions and billions of dollars pumped into it, and you can get paid the same way as you would at a big giant corporate company, as you would at a startup, but you have probably less bureaucracy, less process, less support, all kinds of different things, and it is branded as this completely different experience, which it is, but you have to know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and the reason I almost exclusively have worked with and want to work with VC-backed companies is now, right? So when I worked at Vonage Communications for a year. It was not now. Our comp plan for the fiscal year, our fiscal year ended on January 1. Comp plan for that year got rolled out at the end of March. What? Like, what? Are you like, we went 3 months into the year and no one knew how we were getting paid on deals. It was chaos. It's like the opposite, the polar opposite, like big, public, slow company. And I was like, this is not for me. This is ridiculous. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, this is just incredibly slow. And the VC-backed world, it's now, right? Yeah. And they're going to throw big amounts of money at different things very quickly. It's not an RFP. Like, startups don't do RFPs and have giant decision making. You know, they will at a certain level, but that's a level of bureaucracy you only get to once you have a few hundred employees, like a lot. So it's a
really lot of people don't realize how it all works. I mean, the more money you raise, the more diluted you are. So let's say you started with 1% and you start raising millions and then hundreds of millions and then maybe even $1 billion. I mean, you are getting into the 0.00 percentage ranges if you are an employee and you are inside of an option pool. So an option pool means that you have the option to exercise your shares. Does not mean that you are given these shares. You have the option to buy them. So unless there is some kind of liquidity event, meaning that somebody else bought you or you went IPO, you are not given anything. You are given the ability to buy the shares, but you don't get the shares. So you could work at a company for 4 or 5 years, be fully vested. You could have on paper millions and millions of dollars. But that's what it is, millions of dollars on paper.
Yep.
You might have to hold that for years, a decade, before that you can ever see any of that money. But in order to even exercise those options, you have to give the company thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how early you are and how much equity you have, to be able to even get those options so that at some point in time in the future, maybe the shares are worth more than how much you paid for them. And that's kind of the bet that you're taking.
Yep. It's so common that reps don't understand, like reps and managers and young VPs, right? I don't understand all sides of this world, but I know enough to raise eyebrows when I hear people talk about this, where I'm like, do you know what the strike price is? Do you know if they're options versus shares? Do you know what preferred stock is, right? And how liquidity events get paid out, right?
I recommend a book called Venture Deals by Brad Feld, Jason Mendelson. Jason was he's a friend of mine, but he was actually my teacher or professor in grad school. He also was on my board and an investor at Pivot Desk. So there was a while that he owned way too much of my life, but he and Brad wrote a book called Venture Deals, which explains it. It's a great read. It's really easy. Anybody at any experience level can understand it.
Cool. We're gonna put a link to that book in the comments of or in the description of the podcast here for sure. Well, Alex, like, fantastic experiences here. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of this. We could talk for a lot longer here. I definitely could, but I want to keep it short and sweet. Let's start the wrap up here, where I ask the same 3 questions to every guest. The first question: what's the biggest commission check you've ever gotten?
I'd probably say mid 5 figures.
Okay.
I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I have a ballpark of a couple numbers, but I have to actually go look. But I would say mid 5 figures.
So like 30 to 50K?
Yeah.
In one check?
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels good. That feels really good.
Feels very good.
Yeah. I was
nice
talking
to be able to pay off your student loans.
That's right. Pay off student loans. I had a conversation with a gentleman that I know who got a commission check so big he paid off his mortgage. And I was like,
it's definitely possible.
Yep.
Definitely
and that
possible.
was it. The thing that I gave him a little bit of crap for was, I was like, so you sourced that deal? He's like, no, it was an inbound deal. And I'm like, so this was an inbound deal.
That is the exception, not the rule. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that's not like tomorrow. Like, don't expect to start a job and get that tomorrow. That's, maybe that's inbound, but maybe he's been working at the company for 5 years or 10 years, and he was handed that inbound lead because of his seniority. So
it's the worst case is that the worst part of it is that that's not even it. He's been there for less than a year. He just got lucky. He just got this inbound, and it developed in this enterprise opportunity, and it's millions and millions of dollars, and he got a 6-figure check, and he was like, oh my God. So it does happen. It does happen. That's why we play this game. Unlimited earning potential, right?
Exactly. And there's a billion other people that went the other way.
Exactly. And a lot of reps miss quota and struggle to make it meet. Cool. So the next question, of all the things you've done a lot of things, and currently you're a mentor at a bunch of different spots here. Like, what's been your favorite job in your life? And it doesn't have to be anything that you can find on LinkedIn. Like, what's been your favorite job?
I'd probably say Pivot Desk. My most fun, my most learning. I mean, that was my first true startup that I did, and I mean, it was the greatest thing it changed everything about my career, my income levels, the way I think about the rest of my future, how I create businesses, relationships, how I build things and have sustainable entrepreneurish like activities. I would say Pivot Desk.
Awesome. Yeah, to your point, you said that it was your second MBA, and being at a startup company for 4 years, basically. Yeah, that's gonna be basically an MBA, right? Like, I wish I could be at a company for 4 years. Haven't done it yet. Maybe I will one day. Cool. So last question here. Let's say money wasn't an issue, and you didn't need to make another dollar in your life. What would you do with your time?
I'd probably do one of two things. I'd either be a chef, or I would be an auto mechanic and work on old school muscle cars.
Old
like
school muscle
Challengers
cars.
and Chargers and Chevelles, that type of thing.
Oh, yes. I am not a car guy, okay? I will preface what I'm about to say by saying I'm not a car guy, but I've always told my wife when I get enough money, which is, got to be in that FU money territory, I'm going to buy an old Challenger. Just when you turn it on and it's like, yeah, and it's got the seats and it's like low to the ground. The tires are big. Like, I love those kind of cars. Are you a gearhead? You know what you're doing under the hood?
Mostly on the engine side. I can't do too many things in body work. I think that's a special skill, but mostly with engines, I can get my way around. Nowadays, everything's a computer, so you just plug it in and the computer tells you what's wrong. But my whole family, my dad, my uncle, are super big car guys, so kind of grew up in that space and like to tinker in the garage.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate it. Lots of really interesting nuggets here for the audience. Tell people how they can connect with you, or what's the best way for them to interact with you.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn every single day. I post usually 5-6 times a week. So look me up, Alex Newmann with 2 N's. Otherwise, check out the website. It's alexnewman.com. There's a couple of courses. You can learn more about me. Subscribe to the newsletter, all that kind of jazz. But those are the two kind of best ways.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Alex, thanks once again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day here. And cheers.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
If this episode is interesting to you, please share your thoughts on LinkedIn or Twitter. Tag me, and I might just feature your post in an upcoming episode of the Sales Career Podcast. Or, if you want to connect directly, go to hopconsultinggroup.com, and we'll find a way to work together. Cheers.